Notice how quickly I dressed. Hi there. That was not the sound of music, but the sound of swimming, because we are again today on the Swimming Upstream Radio Show. I'm Dorothy Wilhelm, and we are really happy and excited to be with our new family, Falls and Partners. And we're going to be having some exciting new things for you. But today is, generation gap, which you have known and loved for a long time. And my co-host, as always, is Ray Miller-Still, the editor of the Enumclaw Courier Herald. There you are, dear Ray.
Hey! Oh my goodness, we're live. We're not live, but we're on camera.
I know. Well, I think we should take just a minute to introduce our new producer, Jason Falls. Jason, hello there.
Hi there. How are you?
I am too darn good. I almost said a swear, but I'm trying not to. Do you know when you get old, you swear more? It's an interesting thing.
That is my fault. That is my fault. Go back a couple years.
It probably is. So since we have a time-tested beginning for a generation gap, but since you have teenage children too, Jason, we're going to ask you to join us. Now, first of all, since this is our first show together, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Well, for me, I am located in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm originally from Eastern Kentucky. Very proud of that. I've got two children, a 20-year-old son and a 17-year-old daughter. And I'm kind of an internet marketing dork. This is what I do. I love to do podcasts and video streams and work with clients on social media and things like that.
Well, today you have bravely offered to join us in talking about what we now know about our children. See, Ray is going to get off easier because his young son is only...
You never let me off easy.
Now, the only thing about it is, actually, we still haven't done the introduction, but 4 is a terrible age. They say 3 is a terrible age, but 4 is a really terrible age. So good luck to you. But of course, you guys are so cute, it'll all work out. So usually this show, which is available for college campuses and things, we have taught this show on college at Green River Community College and all. So we're serious. And I just thought it was important to say that. So we introduce our generations, and I belong to the silent generation. And always everybody says, Jason is manfully nodding his head, but everyone always says, what do you mean you were never silent a minute in your life? Which is very true. I never was, but the silent generation, we were the ones that followed the rules. We did what we were supposed to. We went to war and came home and didn't talk about it. And as we raised our children, we had rules. We had tons and tons and tons of rules. And so because of that, and my husband was in the Army and he kept leaving and then he kept coming back. And I was always glad to see him. And that's how it happens that we have 6 children, ranging in age from 80 to 50. That is a whole generation. So, but we have some stuff to talk about. So Ray, how about your wonderful child?
Well, first I got to say I'm a millennial, which means that we never do anything. We never did anything like we were supposed to. But if you think we're bad, just wait until the other ones get into the workforce. But my kid is turning 4 this summer. It's been a wild ride. I'm very excited for him to go from 3 to 4 and see the wheels and the wheels and cogs in his head start turning a little bit quicker. Putting together some patterns more and more. Right now, as I learn, 3-year-olds want to play act things they've already experienced. So that means we are running over and over and over the same act. He's Gonger, I'm Cookie Monster. We're gonna make chocolate chip cookies. We have to drive down to the chocolate chip cookie farm. The farmer gives us the chocolate chip cookies. We go into the back of the truck. We make them, send them. Like, it's a Sesame Street bit. It's a wonderful Sesame Street bit. But we did that 3 times this morning. So it is wonderful. But I'm very excited for a more imaginative playtime.
And that you're going to get. That's good. And Jason, how about those 2 wonder children of yours? And your generation. What generation are you?
I'm Gen X, so we just don't put up with anybody's crap. That's our thing.
You guys have got me outnumbered, haven't you?
A little bit, I think so. But yeah, my son Grant is 20, my daughter Katie is 17, and both of them are very good kids, very good head on their shoulders, really sharp. I certainly credit their mother with that. It doesn't have anything to do with me, I don't
Smart
think.
move.
But their mother and I got divorced when they were 10 and 7, and we made a very strong commitment, Nancy and I, to just being good co-parents and not letting divorce get in the way of taking care of our kids. And I give her a lot of credit for that. And our kids have turned out pretty good. They've, had their spells of misbehavior here and there. But I will say one thing to Ray: when my son turned 4, he actually he was kind of out of control and wild as a toddler. But when he turned 4, it was right about his 4th birthday. He just became this neat little man. And he would just kind of follow me around, and he listened and he behaved and he did things. So 4 wasn't bad for me, for my son. My daughter was the exact opposite. She didn't like me until she was about 2. Then she was a hellion until she was about 4. And then she was a hellion times 5 until she was probably 8 or 9. So it varies. I think it's a little different from kid to kid.
Yeah.
Well, it does, and that's kind of where I wanted to start. Is you're lucky the 4-year-old was well behaved, though. Usually they're dreadful, Ray. But
Well, I'm not counting my chickens until they've hatched, but I have high hopes for this one. Yeah, it is too late to get a refund, but
yeah, he's shop warden now. You can't make him turn back or anything. You can't give him back. So when was the age, though, looking back over the years, that you found out that they were very literal, that they take things that you tell them very seriously, very personally? For me, we were living in Montana in it wasn't even a village. You've heard me tell, no electricity, no running water. And so therefore, no grocery store. And so the Watkins men came to the house, and they came with spices and all kinds of ingredients you might need at home. But my mother, who was a very inventive person, I don't know how she had gotten all the groceries she needed, but she had them. So I am now about, what did I say, 4 or 5, 4 maybe. And she saw the Watkins man coming down the road, and she said, "Oh, I just can't talk to him today." And so she went and hid in the bedroom. And she said, "Now just tell him I'm not here." And I said, "Well, I can't tell him you're not here because there you are." So she went and hid behind the bed and said, "Just tell him I'm not here." And so I went to the door, and the man came in, and he said, wanted to see my mother. And I said, "I don't know where she is," And he said, "Well, do you think you could find her?" And I said, "Yes, I could find her." And we went happily down to the bedroom where my mother is lurking behind the bed. And she bought lots of things from him. So
you are going to have to explain Watkins man real quick.
what?
What's a Watkins man?
In those days, there were about 5 different companies that created, good for you, thank you, that created various kinds of spices, foods, household goods. And Watkins was a big man, but the Fuller Brush man was another one. Fuller Brush wasn't as much in the country, though, as so we had no spices, no nothing. Very little groceries, so they were a good market for spice and stuff like that, hair stuff, which was probably made of the same thing, and furniture polish. Again,
Okay.
it was probably 3 things, but anyway, there were about 5 companies like that. So because there were no stores. So now, at what moment did you realize you had to be very careful what to tell your kid? Either one of you.
I have
Yes.
found that, like most children, my child is lawful good. And if you give him a rule, everyone has to follow that rule. There are no There are no
And that's-
exceptions. There's no particular reason why me as an adult shouldn't always, I should always be brushing my teeth and always be brushing my teeth at the same time. I always need to sit at the table when we eat. I always, all these rules, everyone has to follow them, and it can be complete strangers too, have to follow these rules. So lawful good. It's wonderful when he does it, but it's also, I don't have to follow those rules. I'm wondering when I can introduce that sort of nuance, because right now I can't. He doesn't get that.
Yeah, and for me, it was, I in my, when I'm not on camera and I'm not being recorded, I'm a little bit more liberal with the words that I use, in particular swear words. And that did not change when I had children. And so more than one time we got notes from the school to say, where did Grant pick up this? Where did Katie pick up that? And so I was always the guilty party, and I was like, oh, okay. So I learned to temper myself a bit as they got a little older. But then when they got old enough for me to say, don't repeat what I say at school or you'll be in trouble, then things got better.
Did they actually pay attention to you?
When they were like, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. When they got to that age range, they were a little bit more, oh yeah, we'll get in trouble if we say what dad says at school. So we shouldn't say what dad says at school. So they understood the ramifications of that. But when they were, 5 and 6, it wasn't so easy.
So
I
expect
swear,
you
I
have
more than
something.
my wife does, but he only copies her. So I'm real happy with that. She'll let it slip out, and he'll copy it.
Our first rule is that you can't tell them now put that, make that make sense for me. What was the first rule we decided on? You can't tell them too soon, or
so if we're making up a rule out of what I just said, I think it's probably you need to be careful what you say around them until they are old enough to understand consequences.
I think that's probably okay. No consequences. Okay, Ray, have you got anything more on that one?
I think just really tagging along to that, everything's super literal. And if you see dad do it, then you can do it, and anyone else can do it, and there will be no consequences because there were no consequences for you. And so yeah, it's so literal that cause and effect doesn't exist unless right then and there is cause and effect. Like, dad swears, mom comes in and says you can't do that. Well, then maybe that's different. But if there's no cause and effect right then and right there, it's just going to go straight to their head that I can do this, daddy can do this, mommy can do this, the kid at the park can do this, and we're all good.
Well, and that one doesn't go away because, as you know, my husband died when the kids were really small. And so after a while, I got involved in a number of social activities, and I would be Civitan for one thing. They have that down south. Anyway, so I would be gone in the evening, and Christopher was the oldest one in high school at that point. So he was watching the other kids. And one night something came up, and I went out to dinner or something with the group, and I was late coming home because I knew they would be fine. It wasn't very late, that kind of thing. And I came in the door, and Christopher was standing right there at the door waiting for me. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I just got tied up. And he said, I just can't help wondering what you'd say to me if the roles were reversed. And Christopher is now a doctor of ancient civilizations. But from that, I learned that, especially if there's anything going on in the family that maybe they're having to push against, they want all the rules to be the same. They want them all cut off at the same point. So now Ray, what have you noticed in the last year that has surprised you?
Surprised me. That's a good. I mean, so many things have surprised me. I guess one of them is the pendulum swing of when he's social and when he's not. And I'm trying to still figure out, okay, is this a social day where I can take him to the park and he'll go and play with his friends? Or is this a day where he'll just sit in the chips and watch everyone? I have no idea. It's a crapshoot. And I want to encourage him and set him up for success. So he's not just the kid who's sitting in the corner, but I can't watch that. And I kind of assumed he'd be more or less one way or the other. And I'd be able to predict more or less what was going to happen. I can't do that. There is nothing I can do in regards to that when it comes to his socialization. I can't predict that. Other things I can. I can predict what he's going to have for breakfast because it's the same thing he has every day. It's a blueberry waffle with chocolate chips on it. We do not deviate. He will not let me deviate from that. I know what he's going to have for lunch because I pack it for him every day. It's going to be apples and strawberries plus some crackers. So that's his school snack. And then, I can predict that he almost definitely won't eat what we have for dinner. Because he doesn't. Because he doesn't. And I make sure he has ample opportunity to eat whatever it is. He has become a little less adventurous with his food, which is a bit of a shame. But, that will change. Or it won't, and he'll just go to bed hungry because there will become a time I'm less willing to make another snack after we give him a shot.
They do eat the same things forever. Elaine ate beets, nothing else, just beets. And so she's turned out to be an RN, so that's okay. What about your group, Jason?
Well, for the longest time, my daughter would eat nothing but chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese. That was her meal for, from probably 3 or 4 until 9 or 10.
Wow.
Fair.
Yeah, my son was a little bit more adventurous. He liked to eat whatever dad was eating. So he learned how to, and I'm not a health nut, so he learned how to eat burgers and pizza and chicken nuggets and mac and cheese and french fries and things like that. So I wasn't the best role model for good health for my kids, but once they got to, kind of preteen years, they started being more adventurous and trying new things. So they branched out a little bit, although my daughter still will order chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, depending on where we go to.
I have, my granddaughter is Kate, so I feel a warm attachment there. So any surprises in feeding them that you feel like is a rule or a hard and fast that you want to share?
It doesn't particularly matter. Your kid is A, going to eat when they're hungry. B, they're not going to, if they eat themselves sick because they're just having the same thing over and over, they will learn from that. My kid learned last Halloween that if he eats too much candy, he will get a stomachache. And he controlled himself this Easter with all the candy he got from the Easter Bunny. He's like, I don't want a stomachache, so I'm going to have a little bit, and I'm going to not gorge myself. Like, you learned, awesome. Yeah, I know they were not going to starve themselves. They're going to eat the things that is going to keep them healthy when their body says they're going to keep them healthy, and it's going to be fine. I did not want a picky eater. I really didn't. That was like the one thing. That was the one thing I didn't want because my brother was a picky eater, and I detested it because my parents just absolutely gave into it all the time. So of course, God gives me a picky eater, but I do have to remind myself it is okay. This is not the fight I want to put my energy into. Just let him eat and encourage him to branch out. He's very involved with me in the kitchen. I was very involved in the kitchen when I was young. I wanted to cook, and that helped me be more adventurous with my food. So that's why I want him to help me make the food. Like, you made this dinner, you helped make it, so you should try it. Part of you is in this, maybe literally because you chopped you cut your finger and there's some blood in there or whatever. But yeah, it's fine. Kids will be fine. Kids will take care of themselves when they need to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. Yes, maybe, possibly. What do you say,
when it comes
Jason?
to food, I think.
When it comes to food.
Well, the best advice I could give, the first piece of advice, if you have young children, do not feed them on any carpeted surface. Feed them on something you can mop up and wipe
That's
up.
a good one.
But a more realistic sort of piece of advice I would have for people is my mother was one of those mothers who made me clean my plate. I was not allowed to get up from the table until I cleaned my plate. It didn't matter what she served. And there were 2 things in particular that she served that I would sit there until she was ready to go to bed. I would not eat them. I didn't like the smell of them. I didn't like the taste of them. I wasn't going to do it. And I decided I was never going to torture my kids that way. I was never going to force them to eat anything that they absolutely did not want to eat. And I think that's turned out pretty good because I have still lingering resentment for my mother at age 52. My kids don't have the same kind of lingering resentment for me or my ex-wife.
Oh, son, I have 5 kids older than you are. Let me tell you something.
I think that makes so much sense to me, that food is supposed to be enjoyable, and even when it's not good food necessarily, the mealtime should be enjoyable. And if you're just going to make a kid sit down and start that fight, like you don't really want that. You don't want that negative. I'm sure people out there completely disagree with me, and that's totally fine. You're wrong, but you're fine. But but yeah, I just like that should be a positive time. Oh, as positive as possible.
Yes.
Yeah, mothers feel way differently than you guys do. I will tell you that. Now, our philosophy was Stephen was one who cut angleworms in half and put them in his pocket with the green peas. So that would be a surprise. He gathered up green peas. He didn't care to eat them, and he put them in his pocket, so it looked like his plate was empty with the worms. And when you went to
you did cartoons with that. I thought only cartoons did that. I guess fiction's got to come from somewhere.
Our rule was, and they all are great eaters. Their rule was if this is what you're going to eat, you're not going to eat anything else, which I think you guys have said you all went through that. But my rule was, okay, after you sat here a half hour and we have exhausted our social discussions, you may be excused, but we're going to put the plate in the refrigerator. And if you are hungry between now and bedtime, you will eat that, because that's what we got, and it's good food. And that worked out okay. They mostly did not eat it, I will say, but they didn't eat anything else either. So they had time to kind of balance it all off.
Well, it seems like an okay middle.
Well, it works. It works. So we've got a few workable things here. So if we ever want to pitch Green River again, we can offer food. And so you're not going to believe this. We've been having so much fun, but our time is nearly over.
Oh no.
You should see him. It looks like a cartoon screen. So,
well, they can see me.
Yeah, that's right.
For those who are just tuning in, this is the first time we've been on screen. We've always been just audio before, so we're all getting a little used to this. Well, Jason's
and I bet
Jason's old hat.
Jason knows. Jason's been in radio too. So,
yeah.
So anyway, to close with, we always have to give our audience something to think about. I don't know just what that means, but we do have to do that. So let's start with Jason. What do you want people to think about?
I think when it comes to parenting, as long as you love your kids and support them, no matter what, everything else will work out. There's no reason to get worried up about policies or rules or anything like that necessarily. Certainly have them for structure, but just love and support your kids, period.
Thank you very much. That's Jason Falls, who seems to be in charge of the board here, and not bored, mind you, board. Now, I'm gonna do. See, I can't remember things. I'm elderly. And people will say, don't do that. But I think that I want to piggyback on what Jason said, is that you really can't go wrong as long as they know you love them. It isn't enough for you to know it. That's good. But they've got to be aware. And if you make a mistake, say with the food or with whatever, tell them. So, I thought that was going to work. Didn't work. I'm real sorry. Because it's good for them to know that A, you made a mistake, but B, it isn't going to change things any. And that's probably the most important thing that I learned. How about you? Take it home, sweetheart.
Anytime I make a mistake with Brendan, I sit him down and say, I am sorry. Daddy was wrong. It can be anything from daddy, not following a rule that daddy really should have followed, to him is telling me that mommy told me to get chocolate chips, and I'm looking down the grocery list that mommy made for me, and chocolate chips are not on there, but she did in fact tell him to tell me to do chocolate chips. I thought he was just being a little weasel, but doesn't matter if it was small or big. I apologize. But I'm actually going to disagree here, and I think Jason was a little bit of evidence to this. I'm sure we all know that our parents love us, as so long as they act a certain way and they give us the love and the words that we need. But it also important is to follow up that love with ways you can actually put that love into action. It doesn't matter if a parent says, I love you, and gives you the hugs and kisses. If you don't show up for those games, for those plays, if you're not sitting down and interacting with them, it does show. And I think that if you got to put that love to action, and that is extremely important. And that's something that I do struggle with sometimes, because I'm a busy guy. I clean the house just as much as my wife does. And with a 4-year-old, it's always a mess. And I gotta say, the mess is always going to be there. I need to take a step away and just be with my kid.
That really is true. Now that is Ray Miller still, and every month without fail, he is here on and he's been here forever. He was just a kid 5 years, 6 years now, I think.
I had more hair. I didn't have glasses. More hair, didn't have glasses, and I weighed less than I do now.
It is the glasses. I've been looking at you and trying to think. But anyway, so one last thing. Has your view of parenthood changed in the last 5 years?
Not particularly. When I was going in, I really thought I just got to be super flexible. And maybe perhaps I just realized my kid needs a little more structure than I assumed that he would. But I try and be flexible, and I think in my head, where do I want to put my energy? Do I actually want to put my energy into this back and forth fight? Do I really want to put energy into trying to get him to play by the rules or properly? Do I really want to put energy into trying to force him to go play with other kids? No, I don't actually want to do that. Let's just find the path of least resistance for these things that don't matter, and everyone's going to be happier.
Well, and I think one of the best things too is that he knows that you're open and he knows how you're feeling, because the one thing that I think the greatest surprise in my life has been that if God forbid anything happens and you find yourself, the child does not have one parent or another, they don't believe the parent had the choice of going or staying. They think you could have stayed if you'd wanted to. And this is even if he dies, they still think, well, I must have done something wrong or he would have stayed. So I think making him aware every day that you would certainly stay as long as you could, that's important. Yeah. Promise them faithfully that you'll come back, Ray.
That was my heart, right? Yeah.
Maybe in case somebody was busy.
What a happy note to end on there, Dorothy. Thank you. We does what we must. So Ray Miller Still and I, Dorothy Wilhelm, have enjoyed telling you everything we know about parenting, but we'll be back next month anyway. And this has been, I think, as far as I know, a production of the SOB Radio Network. That stands for Spunky Old Broads. And this show goes on new every month. So if you're hearing this one and thinking, I can't believe they said that, we're going to say something even more outrageous, wouldn't you say? So that's the promise. That's the promise we make to our viewers.
We can do that. Okay. Thanks. Bye. See you later now.